Hey y'all, and welcome back to another video of My Creative Life with Kel Sweetie, where we read books, we make art, and we essentially do whatever our creative hearts desire. Today, I am doing the mid-year freakout book tag. Is that what it's called? Mid-year freakout. Yes, I did it right. Mid-year freakout book tag. Now, I know that some people got a head start on this, did it first week of June. I was busy doing vlogging, Pride TBRs, Halloween hunting. There was no time for this tag, to be honest. And also, I have heard from a few people that was a little too early to be doing it anyway. So, I'm doing it the second week of July because we are officially really fully out of the first half of the year. That's what I'm going to say it as. I also was tagged, well, not necessarily tagged, but I was mentioned in Books and Lala's mid-year freakout book tag. So I kind of thought, okay, well, you can't skip it now. Which, thank you to her. Kayla, if you are watching this, thank you a million times again for mentioning me. I think I've mentioned it before, either in a video that's already out or is coming or whatever the case is. I've thanked you again because you actually put me over 1,000 subscribers, which, hello new people who are here. I hope that you are going to enjoy any of the content that you've seen so far and the content to come, because there will be a lot. But I'm excited to do the tag today. There's a couple on here that I did not answer because I just don't do it. But let's get into it. Oh, a huge shout out to the original creators of this tag. Shout out to Ellie and Shami. Apologies if I screwed up your name. For the original creators of this tag. I know that there has been a lot of people who have done this tag and not given their due. They're here on BookTube, Earl Grey Books, and Read Like Wildfire. Those are, so I believe that Read Like Wildfire has taken down the original video since then, but go make sure that you go and follow them since they are the original creators of this tag. Give credit where it's due. Now, let's get into all of the books that I've read in this first quarter of the year. This first half. 2 quarters, first half. Let's get into it. So we are halfway through the year, and my goal this year was to read 65 books. That may not seem like a lot to most booktubers who are already 130 books in to their read, which I'm just blown away by. I understand that, like, you have nothing but time to read, but it's still just mind-blowing anybody's taking in that much information and retaining it. Last year I went over my goal of 50 books and read 52 books, and that was amazing for me. A lot of y'all may not know, but I rediscovered my love for reading maybe 2 years ago while I was really depressed at my job and didn't have any hobbies anymore and everything, and I started on BookTube after reading pretty consistently for about a year. And some people telling me, like, I feel more comfortable with just hearing you talk about books that are really interesting rather than just even reading them. Like, you should create a booktube. And I did it just to kind of fulfill some, like, creativity. And we're a couple months out from me being a year old on BookTube and a year old on even my Bookstagram being, like, an actual Bookstagram and not just I talk a bit about books on my Instagram. And so I was like, okay, I hit 50. Let's say hit a little bit over 50. Let's try and, like, kick it up a notch. And I said, okay, how about 65? And so far I'm on track, according to Goodreads. Some months and weeks are better than others, but I am now 32 books into the year, which is insane considering last year I read 52 books. So I'm only 20 or so books away from what that original was. I don't know. I think it's more and more I'm seeing it's obtainable. But again, some weeks I'm like 2 books behind and then I catch up. So I don't want to jinx it. But so far it's been a really great reading year. I've not really had that many bad books. And so far now I have about 3 best books of the year. which I think is a good segue into starting the tag, which the first question is, best book you've read so far in 2024. It's a three-way tie. I think I know my favorite, but they're like all three of these are my favorites for different reasons. My first one, if you would have asked maybe a week or two ago, I would have said The Woman Could Fly by Megan Giddings, hands down. Megan Giddings is probably like one of my like newfound favorite authors. I will read her grocery list. Like, I still need to read some of her back catalog, and I definitely plan to in some of these months I have coming up that don't necessarily have themes. As y'all know, I love to read on theme for the month. So we will see. I know that I want to read Lakewood. That's definitely going to get read. And I need her to put out some more books because I will devour them. I cried. I think that's the first time that I've ever sobbed. Like, I had to stop the reading because I was sobbing. And I don't think I've ever sobbed during a book because it just felt so like she knew my life. It was so relevant to everything I've been feeling. Of course, it was a catalyst for a lot of changes and decisions I've made as of recently. So I think overall, I think that that one still may be my favorite of the year, but it is a really close tie to actually the last two books that I've read, and that was Sorrowland by River Solomon and Little Rot by Akwaeke Emezi. Now, Little Rot has now been out for a little bit now, and some of the bookstagrammers, the girls are kind of like, I don't know if that book's for me. And it may not, because I had a ball reading that book. It was a hard read, but it really was so interesting. It spoke on so many things, and for me, it felt like reading it in my mind, it was playing out like if you've seen the movie Belly, which I've mentioned before, or like an early 2000s Spike Lee movie. Like really gritty, high contrast, high saturation, digital film type of media. Like, that's how it played in my mind, and I love it for that. As well as bringing up all these very harsh topics about the pleasure industry and those who work within it and those who benefit from it. Queerness, especially queerness in Africa, which is something that is just not spoken of openly enough. The idea of still searching for yourself and searching for your identity and how to qualify that in after, your early 20s or after, your late teens and stuff. I don't think that there is enough literature about finding your sexuality, or never really truly finding your sexuality or what that identifier is, for many different reasons, after college or after like that time of your life, which makes a lot of people who find that later in life feel very invalidated as being actually a part of the community or queer. So I think that this book definitely talks about it in that gray area space. Loved it. Sorrowland, loved it. It like combined all of my favorite genres and tropes and everything in one singular book, and it never felt convoluted for me. It was written beautifully. Like, I didn't necessarily like love the characters in the sense of like, oh, I like you, but like all of them were interesting. All of them I wanted to know more about. Again, talking about these identities and queerness in a way that's just, it didn't feel like, oh, we're making them this identity just because, but it felt like these characters were real. Cults, black cults, like, let's talk about that. That's not talked about enough. It's like it's like one of those stereotypes where it's just like, black people don't end up in slasher films because we would never end up in a slasher film. And then like a movie like The Blackening is made or Get Out is made, and then it puts that idea on its head. The idea of black cults as being a black person, many times you have heard Waco, Texas would never happen to black people. And then this book comes up and it goes, but what if like it was Waco, Texas, and black people created this community that was not a cult at first in order to escape like the racism and segregation that modern society was just putting on them. And they just decided to make a utopia of their own. But then, of course, men got involved and made it a cult. Never mind that it actually has roots in the government. Who is testing on these people? Amazing. absolutely loved it, ate it up. That was my first River Solomon. The Little Rot was my first Awaken Mizzy. The Women Could Fly was my first Megan Giddings. Like, I just found 3 new authors that I'm like, whatever you write, I will eat it up. So I now have to work on the back catalog of all 3 of these authors. And River Solomon is releasing their next novel, Model Home, in October. So that's getting read. I know that it doesn't make sense with the other books that I have planned for that month, but it's getting read. I don't care. And I'm trying to get me, most certainly I'm trying to get me an arc. We will see if it happens, but I am trying to get me an arc of that book. The next question is best sequel you've read so far this year. Can't answer this one. I don't read sequels. I have only read a handful of sequels. I've only read a handful of series. I think I read Ninth House. I really did love Ninth House. I know that that author is debatable quite a bit. I've not read Hellbent. Unfortunately, it's because I've heard some things about Hellbent being kind of a disappointment, so I haven't read it. Same thing goes for... Actually, there's a combination of many things as to why I have not read the rest. Read Iron... What was it? Iron Flame, after I blew through Fourth Wing and was obsessed with it. One, author's trash, so we're not supporting them whatsoever. And I heard that the book was trash. And this was, of course, after I pre-ordered it. Did my first pre-order ever on a book. So whenever I do my unhaul for the year, which is usually at the top of the year, that's going. Somebody will get a brand new book, unfortunately. Ready Player One. I'm going to be reading Ready Player 2 this month. That's probably the only series that I plan to continue or even read. Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Read that. Surprisingly loved it. But don't plan on continuing the series. Once I like it, I'm like, okay, I liked it. I don't feel, unless it ends on a humongous cliffhanger, that there's no way that I could not read the next one in order for me. That's what's happened with Ready Player 1 and Ready Player 2. I've seen the movie. I love the movie. Ready Player 1 was only a huge portion of the movie, if that. There was so much that there was not in the movie that I loved about the book, that I had to continue reading with Ready Player 2, because it was too much on a cliffhanger for me to not finish it. Next question. New release you haven't read yet, but plan to. I have not read The God of the Woods by Liz Moore, which just came out today. I did get an arc of it and fully wanted to read it. One thing led to another, and I ended up not reading it in time for the release today. But I heard that it's really good. It has to do with the summer camp and a disappearance and all this. Most anticipated release for the second half of 2023. I have 2. So, first one, Model Home by River Solomon. I've spoken about it so much. Y'all are sick of it, but continue to be sick of it. I really want to read it. The other one, actually, and let me check if it's coming out this year. Yep, it is coming out this year. I want to read Evil in Me by Brahm. I am definitely going to read Slewfoot come October. It will not be before I read Evil in Me, unfortunately, because life be lifing. But I really do want to read Evil in Me by Brahm. It has to do with vampires in the 70s, and that sounds great. That, honestly, I mean, it does sound very comparable to Immortal Reluctance or something. It also has a similar cover that came out recently, I think at the top of the year. But I really do want to read that. But I have to read Slewfoot first because so many people got obsessed with that book, and I feel like I need to read it first. Immortal Dark by Tigris Germa, which is like a lesbian, like sapphic vampire story, of course. It takes place in the 1920s. Yeah, I think that's... Nat Cassidy's novella that's coming out later this year during October, I believe, Rest Stop. I'm looking forward to that. I read Mary earlier this year, and I definitely get the hype around him. I still have to read Nestlings, which may get read this summer. I'm not certain. It feels like a winter book, so I'm pushing it off till then. But yeah, that's my list of upcoming releases for the second half of the year, which are far more than I thought that I originally had. Next, biggest disappointments of the first half of the year. First and foremost, the Z word. I spoke about this in depth, so I'm not going to talk too much about it here. The Z word was a huge disappointment. I was really excited to see this fun story about the zombie apocalypse happening at Pride, and the main characters just ruined it for me. I'm queer, but still part of the problem. It was giving Blue Lives Matter in some portions, while it was trying to talk about the issues of rainbow washing. The book itself felt like rainbow washing because of how disconnected the characters kind of felt. It was just like a huge disappointment, and I finished, and it also was not entertaining. I finished it simply despite it, which I hate that I did because it put me in a slump. The other one that was pretty disappointing in some ways was The Power. I felt like the premise of the book was very interesting. This idea that what would happen if women woke up one day and this organ inside of us made us all powerful, and how the ideas of how society would change, and would it change, and what is it that power does to us as humans. I think I liked what it was trying to do, but I think in some parts it got convoluted. I think very difficult conversations happened in the book that were hard to read. And while still proving a point, it sometimes felt like it was shock value for shock value's sake. And so and then the way that it ended felt very rushed. It was a bit of a disappointment because of what I had heard about it. I thought it was going to be one thing, and it ended up being entirely a different other thing. Biggest surprise of the year, Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I just figured I wasn't going to like it. It sounded like it was fantasy. I'd never read a Dark Academia book. And then I ended up loving it, which I know that some people hate this book. They think that, I mean, not, aside from the author kind of brown baiting and everything, as far as like being Latino and writing a Latino character, which a lot of people feel like she knew nothing about and didn't write her properly, which I could see that. I could definitely see that now looking back on it. I don't think that I felt that immediately personally, but I could definitely see that. And some of the depictions of drug use and addiction being unrealistic in their eyes, as well as not having any real trigger warnings of what happens in the book, which I do agree there should be some, because there's a lot of rough conversations in it. But what I did really appreciate in the book was the idea of actual magic and fantasy. What would happen if it was brought into our actual world, and how would people actually use that stuff? And the way they would use it would be like how they use any other superpower and money and whatever in this world, which is, of course, to lord it over other people, take advantage, sell it on the streets, you know. It would be used just as anything else is used, as a weapon, unfortunately. But I appreciated that kind of idea. So, Ninth House was a surprise. I didn't think that I was going to like it whatsoever. New favorite author. Like I mentioned, Aweke Emezi and Megan Giddings are both one of my favorite authors now. New favorite authors for my books that I loved earlier. And River Solomon. I need to read. I know for a fact it's Megan Giddings because I've read more of her works. And I'm like, yes, I absolutely love you as an author. I want to see if I would feel the same for River Solomon and Aweke Emezi. I want to read more of their work and see if like I would be like, yes, you've continued to impress. Next, newest fictional crush. People talk about this, and I don't know. I think I feel aromantic towards people in books because I'm like, they're in books. Not to take their situations aren't seriously. Like, I sit here and break down like the things that I read in books all the time because these are true stories of people, especially things that I read. I don't read a lot of romance, so the idea of finding anybody romantic in the books that I read would probably mean that I was probably a little bit messed up. Like, I read a lot of horror and thriller about murders and monsters and stuff, and so to have any sort of feelings romantically or sexually towards any of these people, I would probably have to be a little bit messed up. Not to throw any shade toward anybody who maybe does read these genres and feel that way. I couldn't see it. The last person that I think that I had any sort of fictional crush on in a book was the last romance that I really liked, and that was, take a hint, Dani Brown. Loved Dani and her man's in there. They both were fine. Like, I could see that. But for this year, Nah. Newest favorite character. Without a doubt, it's Jo from The Woman Could Fly. I related to her and her story and her identity and her relationship with her father, her even parts of her relationship with her mother, her relationship with her man, her feelings towards being with a man, all of it. Like, just absolutely all of it. I related to her entirely. Favorite character. Favorite character so far, I think, of all time. I don't think I've read another character who I felt so aligned with. So, definitely Josephine from The Woman Could Fly by Megan Giddings. Book that made you cry. I don't want to keep on giving this as an answer, but it's more proof as to how good the book was. And that was The Woman Could Fly by Megan Giddings. I had to stop the book and literally sob for basically all of the conversations she was having, mainly about her father. Like, the misunderstanding, the miscommunication, the just strife and struggle and frustration was cry-worthy. I sobbed. I had to take a break because of how good it was and how much it made me cry. There was like a portion in Little Rot that didn't necessarily make me cry, but I did have to take a moment and let it sink in. I've read the portion in my June wrap-up video, so check that out for me to talk a little bit more about it. It didn't necessarily make me cry, but it did make me take a pause. But without a doubt, it was The Woman Could Fly. I cried near the end of that book. Sobbed. Have not cried harder since I've read anything else. Book that made you happy. Okay, that would have to be The Black Girl Survived in this one. That anthology was so amazing and so much fun. All of the characters that were mentioned in it felt like not one-dimensional. These stories felt great, like you wanted more, but it wasn't in a way that felt like necessarily like, oh, this was too short or anything. I had such an amazing time reading every single like story like in that book. I think while my ratings for each story was different, I enjoyed cover to cover reading the book. Which you can't say that a lot about anthologies. I read Peach Pit, couldn't say that about Peach Pit whatsoever. I'm currently reading Night of the Living Queers as an anthology that I'm working through, and it's all right so far. I've not found anything necessarily horrible that I didn't like, but it's still early. Like, I don't, I'm not gonna say it like made me happy in the sense of like, oh my god, this is like fun. In the sense of like, I guess like happy for myself or anything. It just made me happy to read, if that made sense. Favorite book to movie adaptation this year? I haven't seen one. I could not think of any movie adaptation that's come out that was from a book that I've read. And I may be wrong from that because there's been many times before in the past where I've like found out that, oh, that was from an actual, like, that's from a book you read. But so far, I don't think that I have. I'm a little behind on any new movies that have been coming out. Like, I still need to watch, like, The Watchers. The Watchers is a movie adaptation from a book. I still have to watch it. I know that some people have mixed feelings about it, but I'm still interested to watch it. I still need to go see Longlegs. Maxine is out now, so I want us to go see that. Still haven't seen Abigail, and I want to see Abigail so bad, and I don't think it's in theaters anymore, so I'm going to have to wait until it's like on one of these streaming services or just rent it one day from Prime. But yeah, I haven't seen any book to movie adaptations. Favorite post you've written this year? Yeah, favorite post or content you've created this year. I would have to say it's a combination of two things. One was Six Sad April / Old School April. That challenge was so much fun to participate in, not just because the nostalgia, and it was during my birthday month, so to be sitting here and kind of reliving all these nostalgic things from like my childhood and my life while aging another year was so much fun, but also because Six Sad April was so much fun to participate. If you don't follow Apples and Alchemy, make sure you do over on Instagram, as well as Slime and Slashers here on YouTube. They both are the creators of both of those challenges during April, and I had so much fun. Since Six Sad April is based on Daria, I came up with the idea of doing book recommendations for each prompt of the month, coupled with me if you remember Daria, at the end in the credits, they would have like the characters in all these different iconic type of outfits and situations that reminded you of icons and celebs and movies and stuff. And so it was so much fun. One, it was me drawing in a very different style than how I usually do. And it was really fun at the end to put all of those slides together as a recap of the month and do it like how the credits were when you watched Daria. So that was fun. I still go back and I kind of watch it and I'm like proud of myself, but I'm also like, it was just so much fun. Like, I can't wait until next year to participate in it again and like get better at one, that kind of style, because it was great to kind of see that, but also just to participate in it. It was a lot of fun. So that was one thing that was a lot of fun. And then also the I Love Black Horror reading challenge that I did in February. So this was the first year that I ever did that challenge. I basically like I didn't even think anybody was going to join it. It was mainly for me because I was just like, I've read all these horror novels and none of them are written by Black authors, hardly like even have Black people in them. That's a problem. I don't like that. So I basically made this challenge specifically for me, also for me to make content around and stuff. And I had no idea it would travel like it did. I really, really grew because of it. I've met so many amazing people in the horror community, in the Bookstagram community because of it. It really opened a lot of doors and like started off my year so amazing. I'm still in shock about it. And like, I'm so thankful to everybody who participated and shared and followed and whatever during the month of February. Yeah, it just started off my year so amazing. And since then, there's been so much that's happened because of that challenge. So, and even now, I go back to some of those, like, those posts that I drew and illustrated, and I can't believe I was putting out the amount of content I was putting out and having a 9-to-5 job. I was drawing constantly. And I appreciate all the support that I received during that month whatsoever. It was shocking to see how it took off, and it was so much fun. It was so much fun. It was a lot of work, and I was very tired, but it was so much fun. So I'd have to say both of those. One of something that I created and I'm really proud of, and then another of like me participating in something another creator created, and I was like proud of like what came of it. Okay, we're almost there. We're almost done. Most beautiful book you bought this year. Okay, there's two of them. I probably should have pulled them out beforehand, so give me a moment. I hope editing me had a good time editing all of that out. I have two books that I'm just like, I had to have these. These are like so nice. One is this edition of Carmilla. So, look at it. So, I mentioned this in, again, my June wrap-up video. I know y'all are sick and tired of hearing me say that, but go watch it. It's a long one, but there's a lot of information in there. That's why I keep on mentioning it. This book is gorgeous. And it's not just gorgeous because this cover is amazing, which shout out again to the person who designed this book cover, Ernest Haeckel did the jacket art, and the cover design was by Kimberly Glidell. Wonderful, beautiful work. Now, not just is this cover amazing, but also shout out to the interior designers and illustrator they tapped for this book, because also inside of it are these gorgeous illustrations of what's happening in the book. I think there's about 4 in here. I'm trying not to miss any. And they're nearly a majority of the reason to just pick up this version of the book. It was my reason entirely. I had seen the front of it from other creators posting about it, but like none of them showed me that it had these wonderful interiors. Like, look at that. That's sapphic as hell. This is gorgeous. Loved it. Absolutely love it. And like when you kind of look at how much this is, I know that you're sitting there and you're like, this is a paperback. Why is it costing so much? Like, I think this was like $21. And, you know, paperbacks are usually like are a little bit lower. Like, you know, that was nearing lower in hardcover status. And then you see these wonderful illustrations inside of it, and you realize how special an edition this is. This is just honestly so amazing and gorgeous, and I'm just so happy that I got this version of the book. Again, like kudos to everybody who was involved with designing and illustrating this book because I think that it's just so great as a novella. Now, second book that I got this year that is just gorgeous. Bitterroot. The omnibus. The omnibus. I got this, and I got it, luckily, like, it had a little bit of a dent on it, so my local Barnes, like, gave me 15% off or something, which was just, always ask if you see a damaged book, always just ask to see. I am blown away still, and I still have to finish, like, all of them. I started reading these, like, during, I Love Black Horror Month, and I had a great time. And so I decided to just buy the entire book collection. And it's gorgeous. I still cannot believe how great it looks. I love it. So go pick that up if you haven't. It's worth the money. It is absolutely worth the money. And for my last question, what books do you really need to read by the end of this year? So there are so many. Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. I wanted to read before he releases his new work, Rest Stop, in October. As we've talked about, I do want to read Brahms' Slewfoot. Brahm is putting out their next release in September. So I'm already going to be late to the game on that, but because I want to read Slewfoot before I read their next book. But I do want to read that by the end of the year. The Exorcist. I have a plan that in October, I want to read a majority of, like, horror classics. So I want to read The Exorcist. I want to read Rosemary's Baby. Yeah, those are the main two that I really want to read because I'm really tired of everyone I know saying The Exorcist is one of their favorite books ever in horror, and I have no idea what they're talking about. So I really do want to read both of those in October and by the end of the year. Yeah, I have so many. I mean, Model Home is coming out, which I've talked in depth about. November is Indigenous Heritage Month, so I'll finally be reading books like Bad Cree and Stephen Graham Jones's novels, finally. What else is coming up? December, I'll finally probably knock out some Krampus. I'll probably read Brahms' Krampus, as well as maybe some Christmas horror, which I've never gotten into, but that's exciting. I have all these back here. This is my TBR shelf, my physical TBR shelf. I still need to read Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute, which is probably the only romance I will ever get to, maybe this year. Life Ceremony by Sayaka Murata. The Fury, which I've heard is a really amazing. Vinco, which I plan on reading in November for Indigenous Heritage Month. Anita DeMonte Laughs Last. I plan on reading that in September. Starling House, I've heard great things about, so we'll see if I maybe get to that. Oh, I need to read Silence of the Lambs because I got the amazing paperback while I was thrifting, so that's also probably going to get knocked out in October. Flowers in the Attic, I'll probably read in October as well because I found an amazing edition of that as well. There is so much that, I mean, in all honesty, I would love to maybe knock out half of this shelf by the end of the year. That is most likely not going to happen, but we can dream. I would love, off of this shelf, Vinco, The Fury, Life Ceremony, Anita DeMonte Laughs Last, Silence of the Lambs, Flowers in the Attic, The Dead Take the A Train, Fever Dream, Nestlings by Nat Cassidy, World War Z would be great. I want to reread Frankenstein really bad, and oh my god, talking about rereads. And I need to finish Dracula because I never finished that either. Maybe that'll happen in October as well. I want to read some horror classics during October is the main thing. I just basically read off a majority of the shelf because I'm sitting here like, I want this shelf to be depleted like it was when I first started off with this. Oh my god, I still have to read House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson, as well as The Cabin at the End of the World. I'm getting anxiety just thinking about how much I still have physically on my TBR and things that, like, this is just what I have physically. Like, I found it at a thrift store, decided to buy it because it was a good price. That's not even including, like, oh, I want to read this book and it's on my digital TBR. Like, I'm going to listen to this audiobook. I have a lot. I have a lot of books that I have to read by the end of the year, which gives me a lot of anxiety. But I do think that it's possible. Because I'm Halloween hunting now, and I'm not just aimlessly going to the thrift store, I maybe will stop thrifting so many great books, because a lot of these books are books that I've thrifted, never mind like things that are ARCs or were gifted to me. So let's do a little TLDR version ending to end this in this tag. 1, The Women Could Fly basically fit under all of these questions because of how life-changing it was. 2, I barely want to choose between Little Rot and Sorrowland as my runners-up or part of my top 3. 3, we don't read series or have fictional crushes. And finally, Kelsey has a never-ending TBR and probably will be disappointed no matter how many books she reads by the end of this year because of how many books she needs to read to be happy. That sounds about right. So thank y'all for watching. This was a lot of fun to kind of audit my first of the year, my like first half of the year on my reading. Like I said before, I'm a baby booktuber, book reviewer. It's crazy to me that anybody cares about my thoughts on books or that anyone thinks that I have any good suggestions. I read hella weird books, so it's great to know that like somebody out there cares. I'm still blown away by the fact that I've already read 32 books because year before last I only read 32 to 35 books. And so we're halfway through the year and I've already knocked out that goal. Last year I think I hit it around September, October. I think I had hit that. So growth. We call that growth, you know? But it's been really great and I'm having a great time. I keep on reminding myself, once you stop having a good time reading, why are we doing it? You know? So thank y'all for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't. Give me a like if this was entertaining. I know most of my answers were the same or me repeating myself from other videos or whatever, but I hope that it was entertaining somewhat. And yeah, like I said, subscribe down below if this was great for you and if you want to see how the rest of my year goes. I've got a lot to read. If this was any proof of anything, there will be more content to follow because I have a lot to read. So I will see y'all in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.